Have you ever been told you're too quiet, too reserved, or just a bit average? I have, many times, and for a long time, I believed it. I was the kid who blended into the background of class photographs, who raised his hand just a little too slowly to get picked, who sat at the edge of friend circles, never quite in the spotlight. And at one point, I genuinely felt that I was more wallpaper than person. And yet, here I am, standing before you as the senior school prefect of the Scindia school. Which either means I fooled all of you incredibly well, or perhaps there's something we often forget. Just because water is still doesn't mean it's shallow. When I first heard the phrase, still waters run deep, I imagined a quiet lake, calm and peaceful. But underneath, the water is teeming with life, full of movement and mystery. It's a perfect metaphor for something we often overlook in ourselves and others. The quiet depth of potential. The talents we might not even realize we have. Growing up, we're often told to stand out, speak up, be noticed. And by the time we're teenagers, these words start to feel like a checklist for how we should exist. We live in a world where confidence is confused with charisma, where leadership is equated with being the loudest in the room, where self-worth seems tied to how visible, vocal or viral you can be. For example, we see the world of social media as a judge, jury and executioner. Our self-worth and self-image is decided by the number of likes, comments and views we receive. And so, in such a world, if we are not popular or viral, then we are essentially worthless. And therefore, if your voice isn't echoing through a microphone or lighting up a social media feed, it's easy to feel invisible. But here's the truth. Visibility and value are not the same thing. Sometimes, the most extraordinary abilities are hidden right beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to emerge. I'm not talking about the superpowers or the headline-making skills. I'm talking about the gifts which shape us into who we are. The gifts that might change our lives in ways we might never expect. And history remembers not just the orators, but also the listeners who noticed the truth first. Progress has been shaped not only by those who stood on podiums, but also by those who worked in quiet corners, working and solving problems without a spotlight. And if you look closely, some of the most important shifts in history began not with a speech, but with a conversation. Not with a battle cry, but with a question. Rosa Parks didn't start a movement with a microphone. She started it by staying in her seat. Mahatma Gandhi didn't first appear on the world stage. He began by focusing on the small changes, which led to a massive revolution. And if you're someone who doesn't shine in the usual ways, you start to wonder whether you'll ever be seen at all. But the strongest talents often whisper before they roar. They grow slowly, away from the crowd, away from the constant validation, learning in silence what others try to learn in noise. And sometimes the most powerful growth comes when no one is watching, because that's when you learn to grow for yourself. I never wanted to come to boarding school at first. My twin brother was the one excited about it. I simply gave the entrance exam because my mother wanted to. But when it came time to choose, I said yes. And when my brother left in class 9th, I chose to stay. Not because I had to, but because somewhere along the way, I had found my own reason. And that's something quiet people often do. We take time to choose, but when we do, we commit fully. In class 7th, my housemaster unexpectedly gave my name for an English elocution. I hadn't asked, I hadn't even volunteered, but she believed I could do it. And that one nudge kick-started a domino of change. Soon after, my seniors, People who had no obligation to help set aside their time to train me in debating. They didn't care how inexperienced I was. They simply saw potential and wanted to help me grow. And in life, there will be times when people will believe in you. But at the same time, you must believe in yourself. For instance, in the movie Kung Fu Panda, Po spends most of the film doubting himself, thinking whether a fat panda like himself could ever be the dragon warrior. However, when he sees his own reflection on the scroll, he realizes that there is no secret ingredient. And what makes him special isn't something outside him. It's been inside him all along. And for me, that's what quiet growth is all about. It's not about proving yourself instantly or being the loudest right now. It's about using today to lay the groundwork for tomorrow. And that's the tricky part for us as teenagers. We're still figuring out what we're good at. Sometimes it's obvious. If you're able to outrun everyone at a race or ace every math test, people notice. But what if your talent is subtle? The ability to make people feel heard, or the knack for solving problems under pressure. I remember when I first joined the debating team, I was terrible. Not just bad. Like I forgot my points and mumbled bad. I was nervous, unsure, and said like a million times. I felt like a fish trying to climb a tree. But I stuck with it. Partly because my teacher didn't let me quit, and partly because I didn't want my last memory of debating to be me joking in front of the audience. And slowly, it clicked. I got better. And that's when I realized I didn't need to be the loudest to be heard. I just needed to be clear. And standing before you as the senior school prefect, I can tell you this. The thing you're worst at today could be the thing you're known for tomorrow. But that's true only if you practice. We tend to think of talent as something flashy, but often it's about consistency. A swimmer who shows up every morning for practice, even in winters, will always outlast the one with raw talent but no discipline. Because quiet commitment is still water running deep. There's a design principle that says less is more. That's true for art, speeches, and I think for life. Strip away the excess and what remains stands out. Speak less but with purpose, and people lean in to listen. Focus on fewer goals so that you can give each of them the depth they deserve. Photographers understand this too. The most striking images aren't the ones crammed with detail from edge to edge. They use negative spaces, those empty areas that provide the subject room to breathe and space for the eye to rest. So, not every moment needs to be filled in. Not every silence has to be broken. Sometimes the most powerful sentence in a conversation is the pause you leave before it. Sometimes the most moving music comes from the silence in between notes. Sometimes the most meaningful progress happens not in a burst of activity, but in the discipline of consistency. And in today's world where we're constantly told to do more, say more, post more, here's the truth. Being quiet doesn't mean you have less to say. It means you've chosen to give only what matters. And that choice, to focus on depth rather than noise, to value impact over attention, is the most radical thing one can do in a culture that measures worth based on likes, views, and applause. Because in the end, less isn't about lack. Less is about intention. Less is about clearing the space so that what's truly important can take the center stage. In fact, I've realized that quietness itself comes with its own set of hidden advantages. You start to notice the small things. A shift in someone's tone. The way two people exchange glances in a meeting. The slight pause before a friend says, "I'm fine," but when they're not. And that ability to read the room before you speak can change the way you lead. I remember someone once asked me, or told me rather, You're not aggressive enough to be a leader. I smiled, nodded, but deep inside, I made a quiet promise that I'd prove that empathy is a kind of strength too. Because true leadership isn't about overpowering others, it's about empowering them. It's about asking the quietest person in the room what he truly thinks. It's about lifting someone up so that their light can be seen too. And I'll be honest, even I've had moments where I thought, maybe I'm not a good leader. Maybe I'm not doing my job well. That's the fear, isn't it? That we're not capable enough, or that we don't seem to possess the talents that others have. But I've realized, especially in this school, that there are too many opportunities for that to be true. Because you only stay average when you stop exploring. And there are too many doors waiting to be opened. There are too many paths you haven't walked yet. And one such path opened for me the most unexpected way. A teacher noticed how much I enjoyed design work and asked if I take the lead role in crafting the school yearbook. I didn't think of it as leadership at first. It wasn't a microphone, it wasn't a stage, and it wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room. But as I slowly began to write, design, and arrange those pages, I realized that leadership is also about being quiet, creative, and deeply influential. It's not only about commanding people, it's also about shaping ideas, guiding a vision, leaving behind something that speaks long after you've gone. Sometimes it's about shaping the way a community remembers itself. So how do you discover these hidden talents? 3 things: curiosity, courage, and patience. Curiosity is saying yes to things even when they don't seem like your thing, because you never know what might light you up until you try. Courage is taking that first step out of your comfort zone, even if your voice shakes, even if you feel that you might not make it. And patience. Patience is letting yourself be a beginner without shame, trusting that every awkward moment will shape you into someone better. And each one of us has a kind of reservoir inside us. Some of us have only touched a little of it. Some of us haven't even discovered it, but it's there. It's in the mentor who says that one sentence that lasts with you for years. It's in the classmate who takes a step back so that you can have the chance to shine. It's in the leader who makes decisions based not on ego, but on empathy. And it's in you, and in your own belief in your abilities and skills. I think one of the most misunderstood forms of leadership is quiet influence. The ability to change the direction of a conversation, group, or even a culture without even having to raise your voice. And as the senior school prefect, that's the kind of influence I want to have. Not the kind that fades away after a speech, but the kind that quietly changes the way someone sees themselves. Maybe even long after they've forgotten my name. So as I look out at all of you here, I know there are singers who haven't yet touched the mic. There are writers with stories yet to be heard. There are athletes who've never stepped foot on the field. There are leaders with your voice ready, just waiting for the right moment to be heard. And at Scindia has a way of bringing out the sides of you that you even didn't know existed. Sometimes on the sports field, sometimes in the classroom, and sometimes in the quietest corners of the phone. Your moment will come. Maybe during an inter-house debate, maybe during the annual play, or maybe when you're just helping a friend through a rough time. But your moment will come. And when it does, do not let it pass unnoticed. And one day, this very community will look back and say, we knew him before the world did. Because that's the thing about still waters. They don't just run deep. They leave ripples that carry far beyond. So trust your pace, honor your process, and let yourself unfold. Because your moment will come. Not in a shout, but in a shift. Not in a burst of applause, but in the quiet knowing that you've arrived exactly as you were meant to. Thank you.